Mr. Speaker, as I rise to make my presentation, may I first give the Almighty thanks for providing me with good health, long life, and I hope it will be many more presentations. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my family who have given me full support over the years. They no doubt have their doubts whether I should be in the partisan politics, but having been there, they are very critical of what I do, and it's critical support, but always they are right standing beside me. And my wife is in the gallery.
Long suffering. She suffered too much because of
My first daughter, and interestingly, it's her birthday today, so I want to wish her a happy birthday. And my last daughter also is here. That's my fourth daughter. There are 4 daughters. And both daughters are now lawyers in Jamaica. And fortunately, they'll be able to take over where I've left my law practice, so that I can at least get some support while I do the business of the Justice Ministry. I want to thank the Prime Minister for having faith in me to once again appoint me as Minister of Justice, and my colleagues who have given me support over the years. I certainly want to thank the members of the constituents of the great constituency of St. Andrew Northeast, who have seen it fit over the last 5 elections to ensure that I win the seat quite comfortably, in excess of 60% on all, at least on the last 4 occasions. My councillors are here who have given me support over the last 17 and more years that I've been, well, almost 20 years, 19 and more years, that I've served in the constituency. I've had 5 opponents, Mr. Speaker, and certainly for at least 2 of them, I've been able to introduce them to the delegates of the People's National Party. And this, Mr. Speaker, is a model constituency because we don't have any gang warfare. We don't have any political tribalism, which was things that I met there. And it is a constituency we no longer have. Because the constituency, Mr. Speaker, when I went there was a lot of political tribalism, gang warfare, and so on. But the way in which we have dealt with especially these pockets of garrisons, we have been able to ensure that whether it is a JLP or a PNP pocket garrison, we encourage them. We are ahead, and a very good point, member from Central Manchester. When the recommendation of the report is to dismantle garrisons, Northeast St. Andrew is a good model to start with, because in all those pockets of garrison, we encourage people to vote their choice.
I have no garrison.
And also, Mr. Speaker, the benefits, and all the small handouts or contracts, we do it without consideration of political color. And in Northeast St. Andrew, Mr. Speaker, you won't see green flags, you won't see any political slogan, because we feel that people must move about freely, regardless of political color. And Mr. Speaker, I commend it to all the members of Parliament, because that is how we have been able to live peacefully right across all boundaries. Members can move from anywhere, from Barbican to Grand Spence to Ligonier to Shortwood, right across, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to thank the members of the Ministry of Justice, headed by the Permanent Secretary, who in the past 4 months have given me full support and have assisted me in understanding the Ministry of Justice and to understand what has taken place so far and the mammoth task ahead of us, the program of work that we have to undertake, started in our administration, continued in the last administration, and should I say improved in the last administration, and which we will continue to improve. Mr. Speaker, in this short period that we have to make a presentation, it is really not possible to touch on all the important programs that we undertake and continue to do at the Ministry of Justice. But the paper will be presented to you shortly, and you will see that more than half of it are in the appendices. And the appendices contain some of the work being undertaken at the Ministry of Justice. And I would urge members of Parliament and the wider public to look at them, because over the period of time, the outstanding members of the Ministry of Justice, starting with the Permanent Secretary, the legal team, we hope will be on the road in the media explaining the justice program and how these programs at the Ministry of Justice affect the ordinary man here in Jamaica. Because, Mr. Speaker, we hope to make the Ministry of Justice not only robust, impartial, fair, and reasonable in every way, but we want it to be the primary ministry in Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, this is the first time, perhaps in 15 years, that the Ministry of Justice is doing a sectoral presentation in the lower house. Indeed, perhaps in the last 40 or so years, there's been only one minister who had a portfolio responsibility, and it was Justice and Security, Honorable K.D. Knight. But all other ministers of justice have presented from the upper house. So this is an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to highlight the importance of the justice sector, and I'm really honored to be the standard bearer in presenting the justice portfolio. Mr. Speaker, the work of a justice ministry in any country is the foundation for the establishment of a just and law-abiding society. Our Ministry of Justice has lived up to its responsibility and continues to be the nucleus of the government's legislative program. Mr. Speaker, as a ministry responsible for advancing, upholding, and facilitating the rule of law in the delivery of justice, the Ministry of Justice administers and delivers justice services, as well as provides the policy framework, operational support, and analysis on justice issues. As part of our mandate, Mr. Speaker, our commitment to justice is to ensure that the rights and freedoms of every citizen is protected and respected, that the abuse of power is exposed and sanctioned, that officials exercising authority are held strictly accountable and responsible for their decisions, that our courts will operate efficiently and effectively, and that justice is delivered in a timely and satisfactory manner. Mr. Speaker, access to justice is a critical feature of democracies. It is important that our justice system is equitable, robust, and impartial. There's tremendous work, Mr. Speaker, still to be done in reforming the justice system so that more of our people can have faith and confidence in the system. A significant part of the responsibility, Mr. Speaker, falls on all of our citizens, who we need to encourage and empower to participate in the system when called upon to do so. This administration, Mr. Speaker, recognizes that a just society requires cohesion and continuity if we are to fulfill our responsibility to protect the rights and freedoms of our citizens. Mr. Speaker, it is why this administration will build on the strides made during our last term in office and recognize the efforts made by the previous administration by continuing the justice reform program, the program to remove and repeal outdated legislation, the backlog reduction efforts in the courts, the modernization and expansion of the courts, the thrust to protect vulnerable groups in our society. Mr. Speaker, the foundation has been set for the establishment of a Human Rights Institute. You will recall, Mr. Speaker, that in 2011, we passed the Charter of Rights, which provides more comprehensive protection for the fundamental rights of Jamaicans. The Human Rights Institute will serve to ensure that as we navigate the challenges of our changing society, the rights and freedoms of citizens will always be protected. Mr. Speaker, the last administration worked with the European Union in order to set the stage for this Human Rights Institute to be set up, and it will, in fact, come under the Office of the Public Defender. And when it does, Mr. Speaker, hopefully during the course of this year, we are going to have an institute that will ensure that the rights and freedoms of the Jamaican people are well known to all of our citizens and that they are protected and upheld. Mr. Speaker, our criminal justice system is a continuous work in progress, and you may be aware that most of the criticisms that we have received from international agencies have been about our criminal justice system. That is why, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Justice will move with urgency to make our criminal justice system more efficient and more effective in supporting the efforts of law enforcement. As part of this effort, Mr. Speaker, we will be increasing the number of courthouses, judges, and prosecutors, and expanding the opportunities for our citizens to access justice. Mr. Speaker, it's very important for us to recognize that unless the people know their rights, they're not able to pursue them. And fundamental to this, Mr. Speaker, we now have in place a mobile legal aid clinic. And it will be at the Ministry of Justice, so those of you who visit me this afternoon can see it at the Ministry of Justice at 61 Constant Spring Road, where that mobile clinic, Mr. Speaker, will travel wherever they are requested. A neighborhood watch group, a community group, a church group, or any group, they can invite this mobile clinic to speak, or in the mobile clinic, there are 2 private rooms for persons to be able to speak with lawyers in order to understand or to get a better understanding of the legal work or whatever problems they're having. So, Mr. Speaker, this undoubtedly is a big feather in the cap of the Ministry of Justice that we will, Mr. Speaker, be putting out this clinic so that anyone in Jamaica can receive proper legal advice and know their rights and freedoms, and it is available to any group or citizen right across Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, we have had some good results in recent times from the amendment to the Dangerous Drugs Act, where small amounts of marijuana was criminalized, and now we have decriminalized it, even though, let me emphasize, that you can still get a ticket if you're smoking in public. But, Mr. Speaker, the main point to note is that during the past year, instead of 8,284 cases coming to the parish courts in 2014, that was reduced to just over 2,000 in 2015. So, Mr. Speaker, that amendment certainly reduced the number of cases that went to the parish courts, and we expect it will be further reduced as we ensure that our citizens are not brought to the magistrate's court or what we call the parish courts now, Mr. Speaker, for a simple spliff. they can be dealt with in the petty sessions. In addition, Mr. Speaker, along with those amendments carried out by the last administration, the expungement of persons who were convicted for ganja-related offenses, we have been able, and I now report, that nearly 3,954 persons have had their records expunged and now have a clean police record. Mr. Speaker, the main focus, the main challenge that the Ministry of Justice has is how do we reduce and remove the backlog of cases in the courts. And to do so, Mr. Speaker, creative programs will have to be put in place, and resources will have to be directed to the Justice Ministry, so that when persons, citizens, access justice, they can have justice delivered in a fair and reasonable time. And in that regard, Mr. Speaker, I propose that timelines should be put for cases to be decided. I start first, Mr. Speaker, with the judges. When a judge hears a case, and having heard the case, he retires to deliver judgment. The international standard is that the judgment should be delivered within 30 to 3 months. Within 3 months. And I say, Mr. Speaker, the majority of our judges are doing so. In other words, they're delivering judgments within 3 months. The majority of our judges, and credit must be given to them because many of them are overworked. But, Mr. Speaker, we do have a few judges who have judgments extended into years. And that, Mr. Speaker, cannot be allowed to continue. Public pressure, moral suasion, and the last thing we want to do is to legislate. We do not want to interfere with the judiciary. But, Mr. Speaker, the judiciary and those who are delinquent in the delivery of judgments must step up to the plate and ensure that their judgments are delivered certainly within 6 months. And more often, within the time period of 30 days to 3 months. Recently, Mr. Speaker, the Bar Association listed about 62, and I understand it may be over 100 judgments that were longer than 6 months. I have asked them to, and since then, Mr. Speaker, and it appeared publicly, a number of the judges have delivered their judgments. But I certainly, Mr. Speaker, would like to know at the end of July how many are still over 6 months, because pressure must be brought on those judges, and assistance must be given to them so that they can use the summer vacation to deliver by the end of September. And I've spoken to the Chief Justice, Mr. Speaker, to indicate to her, this Parliament provided 10 judicial clerks to help the judges to prepare and deliver the judgments. And having spoken to the Chief Justice, she has employed a further 30 judicial clerks over the summer period to assist these judges in delivering the judgment. And I say, Mr. Speaker, I told her, if you need more clerks, let me know. And we will find the resources, because it is not fair to litigants where the case has been heard for them to be waiting longer than a few months for the judgment. Lives are being held up when that happens, Mr. Speaker. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are going further. I have no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that the judges, many of them are overworked. We do have the establishment of 40 judges, but we only now have 35 in place because enough rooms were not available. But at any time, Mr. Speaker, a number of them are on leave or may, in fact, be, for whatever reason, be unavailable. Mr. Speaker, I hope to put in place a cabinet submission which is already prepared and should go to cabinet to amend the Constitution to allow for us in Jamaica to employ judges who have passed the age of 70. Now, the retirement age will still remain at 70, Mr. Speaker, but all of these judges who have retired, they are now given their expertise and skill to commissions, and also, Mr. Speaker, to overseas. Many of them are working in the Cayman Islands, Bermuda, Bahamas, Turks Islands. And I say, Mr. Speaker, we need to utilize that experience. And I say, Mr. Speaker, we want to amend the Constitution to provide that for that opportunity and ability of the Chief Justice and the President to call and retired judges to serve as needed. And we hope, Mr. Speaker, that that will be done later this year, the latest next year. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the Court of Appeal, since 1962 or 1967, have had only 7 judges. In 2010, we provided for the establishment to be increased to 12. But because, Mr. Speaker, no space, there were no office space, and still at this moment, Mr. Speaker, there's no office space, the Court of Appeal still remain at 7. But I'm happy to report, Mr. Speaker, that the Accountant General that occupies half of the building of the old Jamaica building will be removing, hopefully by August. And therefore, we can utilize that space so that at least some more Court of Appeal judges can be appointed to deal with a growing backlog in the Court of Appeal. It will also, Mr. Speaker, allow for more space for the DPP, and that more prosecutors can also be appointed. Because, Mr. Speaker, the 44 prosecutors, they themselves are overworked. And we have hundreds of cases across Jamaica still to be tried. And initially, Mr. Speaker, we hope, at the moment we only have 4 criminal courts or courts dealing with criminal matters in the Supreme Court. We intend to rescope some of the civil courts in the old building as against the new building in the north, so that we can have at least 8 courts trying criminal cases and hopefully as many as 10 in the Supreme Court. And further, Mr. Speaker, in the parishes, we now have circuit courts sitting for only 3 weeks at a time. It's just not enough to deal with the cases in all the parishes. We hope, Mr. Speaker, that we can increase the 3 weeks to 6 weeks as soon as we have more judges and more prosecutors to be able to go into the parishes. Mr. Speaker, in the parishes, we have increased the number of parish judges from 46, I think it was, and at the moment the complement or the establishment is 70. But so far we have only employed 55. In the short term, Mr. Speaker, we want to employ immediately at least another 15 or 20 permanently or on a part-time basis to deal with the backlogs in the parish courts. Because, Mr. Speaker, all the parish courts are now overburdened with cases, both in the civil and the criminal jurisdictions, and it is important that we attend to them urgently. Because, Mr. Speaker, this is where the average man gets his justice, in the parish courts, and we have to make sure that more judges and prosecutors and clerk of courts are available so that these matters can be dealt with. You see, Mr. Speaker, the whole justice system requires management and requires that all the stakeholders get together and work together. It doesn't make sense blaming the defense counsel or the prosecutor or the judges or the jurors. Everybody, Mr. Speaker, must come together, work together, and make sure that cases are done and delivered on time. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, it is important for the stakeholders within the justice system to recognize that there are alternative ways to deal with disputes. Not every case needs to go to trial. You have alternative methods. Mediation can assist. Alternative dispute resolutors are available, so that lawyers should be encouraged to use mediation and to use other means to resolve cases rather than everyone coming to court having the judge and imposing on the judge a heavy burden to decide all these cases. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Justice will be really ramping up a number of measures. Restorative justice. And restorative justice, Mr. Speaker, the bill will shortly come to Parliament, where in the criminal courts, if we can get the offender to admit that he has committed the offense and the victim to forgive, then we can say, use restorative justice and to exercise mercy in the disposal of the matter. So, Mr. Speaker, rather than the state just taking total control, if the victim and the offender and the community can really say this is a domestic matter, we feel that if the offender admits that he did wrong and the victim can say, I will forgive him or her, as the case may be, then restorative justice can apply and maybe the community will be better off. And we will be recommending restorative justice, Mr. Speaker, not only to communities, which now it now happens, but to the court itself, the judge, to utilize restorative justice, speak to the victim, speak to the offender, speak to the witnesses. Is this a matter that can be resolved without a trial? And in those circumstances, Mr. Speaker, that alternative method hopefully will decide a number of cases without an actual trial. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, even when it comes to trial and the offender admits or pleads guilty, then it's an opportunity for the judge to use restorative justice, to use the social inquiry report to see if this offender can be rehabilitated within the community. And in such circumstances, Mr. Speaker, we keep that offender from going to prison and go back to the community and hopefully properly rehabilitated and re-engage back in his community. Mr. Speaker, matters such as arbitration. We intend to lay in Parliament soon, it should go to Cabinet shortly, the Arbitration Act. Now, Mr. Speaker, there are many countries. Singapore, in the last 10 years, have used arbitration as a major economic growth potential. In essence, Mr. Speaker, what Singapore has done, when big money is in conflict, many of the parties do not want to go to court. They want arbitrators to assist them in coming to a decision. And Singapore, Mr. Speaker, over the last 10 years, and right now, is now becoming the very top place for arbitration. And Mr. Speaker, we saw that potential over 5 years ago for Jamaica to be an arbitration center. And we hope, Mr. Speaker, when this Arbitration Act is finally enacted, that we can make Jamaica, especially our nice hotels on the North Coast, be arbitration centers for those big companies that have disputes and want it to be dealt with, not in the courts, but by arbitrators. Mr. Speaker, there are some matters in the courts which can be dealt with and are dealt with without judicial time. And I'm speaking, Mr. Speaker, of divorces and probate. Mr. Speaker, when a person dies, if he or she leaves a will, the will has to be probated. And if he or she doesn't, then it has to be administered. There's absolutely no reason, Mr. Speaker, why a probate should take more than a few weeks. And the same, Mr. Speaker, with divorces. After the papers have been filed, you must be able to get your divorce within 3 months. And Mr. Speaker, I have had discussion with... I have had discussion, Mr. Speaker, with the Chief Justice so we can put in place the necessary resources so that not only divorces but probates can be done within 3 months. Because, you know, Mr. Speaker, when an estate has to be probated, there are tens of millions, hundreds of millions, $1 billion sometimes held up, waiting on the estate to be probated and holding up many lives. And I say, Mr. Speaker, there's absolutely no reason why it should take more than a few weeks to do so. And it's the same with divorces. 2 lives are being held up. And the children and the estate of the family needs to be dealt with. And, Mr. Speaker, it's important that the justice system step up to the plate and make sure that these are delivered on time.
Mexican divorce, madam.
Mr. Speaker, I have spoken about the many programs, and indeed, Mr. Speaker, as I said, time will not allow to deal with all of them. But there's one area, Mr. Speaker, that the Justice Ministry will be concentrating a great deal on over the next few months, and that is the training of justices of the peace. Here, Mr. Speaker, you have, at the moment, we have about 5,000 to 6,000 JPs. The actual number is not really known, but it's somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000. These, Mr. Speaker, are upright citizens, because I have said if any GP becomes or acts inappropriately, then it is important for the custos to remove the stamp and disenfranchise that person right away. They're given voluntary work, and we must respect what they're doing. But if at any time they act in a manner not befitting their office, then their seal must be removed. And the JPs are aware of that. But, Mr. Speaker, they are doing yeoman work right across Jamaica. And I've met with the custodies and the Governor General to urge the custodies to appoint more JPs. And I've urged them, Mr. Speaker, not to appoint them when they reach 60 or 69, but to make sure that we have some more younger GPs. And to find, Mr. Speaker, some of the really upright, decent citizens in our inner city communities. Because in many of these inner city and rural communities, the people cannot find JPs. And the few JPs who are working are overworked. Because far too many JPs, far too many, I say it, Mr. Speaker, without fear of contradiction, like the term JP, but not doing the work. We have to encourage that all of them must really use their office to act appropriately. But, Mr. Speaker, I will be going across Jamaica to speak to as many JPs as I can, because, Mr. Speaker, these citizens in our communities are really the conscience of their community. They are the people who are the example that others must look up to. They are the people who must bring peace in their community. And as I say to them, when I speak to them, your title is Justice of the Peace. So when there's no peace in your community, you must be proactive and come out with other GPs and other stakeholders and bring the community to peace. And I say, Mr. Speaker, that will be the role, because we have a problem with indiscipline, with disorder, with corruption, and with crime in this country. And the honest, hard-working people of this country, exemplified by the JPs, must step up to the plate and take back control of their communities and make Jamaica the place we want it to be. So, Mr. Speaker, I will be going on this campaign to help the JPs and urge them to get into training programs, to learn more about how they can operate in the courts, how they can assist with mediation and dispute resolution. Because, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, every single Jamaican must come forward and be active in upholding what is right in our country and make sure that those who want to destroy Jamaica are sidelined, whoever they may be. And I know that the JPs right across Jamaica want to make Jamaica a better place. And we will use the JPs as the leaders in their communities to make Jamaica a better place. Mr. Speaker, the overseas partners, be it the European partners, the United States aid program, the Canadians, and many other countries, Mr. Speaker, have given full support to not only to the government, but to the justice system. And Mr. Speaker, they have not only provided funds, but they have provided training. And at this time, I want to thank all those overseas partners who have really worked with the Justice Ministry in training the judges, the prosecutors, and all persons in the justice system. And Mr. Speaker, as I indicated, there are many programs in the Ministry of Justice. We have the JUST program, that is the Justice Undertaking for Social Transformation. We have the JSAT program, Justice Security, Justice Administration and Administration and Transparency. We have, Mr. Speaker, the Juris program, the CSJP program, and many other projects, Mr. Speaker, that the Ministry of Justice will be broadcasting to Jamaica as how they can assist in transforming the social life of Jamaica. And this, Mr. Speaker, will be engaged in by the many skilled persons at the Ministry of Justice, starting with the Permanent Secretary, the legal officers, and many others to bring this program right across Jamaica. Because, Mr. Speaker, many of these programs impact on the growth program of this government and also for job creation. The priority programs and projects, Mr. Speaker, have been identified by the Ministry of Justice and its partners, and it will have a serious impact on government's theme for prosperity. Mr. Speaker, this is demonstrated by the improved efficiencies achieved through stronger institutional capacities under the JUST and JSAT program, improved prosecutorial outcomes in relation to organized crime and corruption under the JSAT program, and an enabling legislative framework to correct existing impediments to trade and cooperation. Through legislative and constitutional reform, legal impediments to growth are being removed, and legislative enablers to economic growth and prosperity are being introduced. Mr. Speaker, under the JUST program, the transformation of the Jamaican society into one that is cohesive and just remains a priority towards the achievement of Jamaica's growth agenda. This will be achieved through the JUST program, which involves the institutional strengthening of the Ministry of Justice and its agencies, namely the Attorney General's Chambers, the DPP, the Parliamentary Council, legal reform, as well as the courts. Mr. Speaker, under this program, technical assistance will be provided. And one bit of technical assistance, Mr. Speaker, is to make the courts into almost a technological center. What do I mean by this, Mr. Speaker? When we recently changed the Evidence Act to allow for evidence to be given by video and also by satellite, so that a witness nowadays, Mr. Speaker, under the amendments to the Evidence Act 2012, a witness can be in Montego Bay and give evidence from Montego Bay to the Supreme Court using a video link. This is important, Mr. Speaker, because there are many witnesses who don't want to appear in court because of fear and for many other reasons. So to that extent, Mr. Speaker, it has been tried. The Act now allows for a witness to be elsewhere, give his or her evidence, rather than having to face the accused in court. Now, Mr. Speaker, this is an important amendment because many witnesses are very fearful. But witnesses across Jamaica must now know that if you're fearful to appear in court and to see the accused. You can't face the accused, that you can give your evidence from nearby or from far using a video link. But, Mr. Speaker, a very important point should be noted. Within the courts, and we hope that all of the courts will soon be equipped with audio, visual, electronic equipment. And the point, Mr. Speaker, is that when a case is being tried, this audio-visual equipment will be able to see and take down everything that happens in court. Now, you see, Mr. Speaker, this will enable the judges, rather than sitting and writing down everything by longhand, which they now do, and they take forever for a case to be tried, it will now be possible, Mr. Speaker, for the judge to be able to watch the witness and get a better assessment of the witness giving evidence, and the evidence itself will be recorded. But what is interesting, Mr. Speaker, the equipment being purchased and used will immediately transfer the voice into words using phonetics, so that if an appeal is to be heard, then it won't take 2 years or many months. The transcript can be ready in hours or days. And indeed, Mr. Speaker, that sort of equipment was utilized in the West Kingston inquiry, so that at the end of the day, everybody, defense counsel, prosecution, judge, can get an actual transcript of what took place in the day. And they can read it and see what happened during the course of the day, which is exactly what happened in the West Kingston inquiry. We hope, Mr. Speaker, that in every court, this audio-visual equipment will be there, so that we can now ensure that there's transparency and there's speed in cases being tried, and if they're appealed, that they can go to the appeal court in a short space of time. Mr. Speaker, we hope very shortly to be able to put this and to show Jamaica how it works. Mr. Speaker, there are several critical pieces of legislation which you will see in the paper, which I'm hoping you should have got by now, the booklet. Everyone should be presented with a booklet, please. I thought you had it, yes. Everything. And Mr. Speaker, what we're saying, what you have here, Mr. Speaker, several appendices, several showing what is being done at the Ministry of Justice, because time will not allow for everything to be explained. But there are important programs there, and over the next few months, I have urged the Ministry of Justice that we must put it in the media, on the air, so that people know exactly what is happening at the ministry. Mr. Speaker, an improved and efficient justice sector will ensure a higher level of case resolution, which will in turn improve crime solving and contribute to making Jamaica a safer and more secure society. Jamaican citizens are not only entitled to have access to justice, but to have their matters resolved in a fair and timely manner in accordance with their constitutional rights, whether they be victims or accused persons, complainants or defendants. We are all called upon, Mr. Speaker, to contribute to the justice system by serving as jurors when required. You might not know this, Mr. Speaker, but I hope he doesn't mind me saying. The former Prime Minister is now at this moment serving as a juror. And he has been serving as a juror for the last 17 days when I spoke with him last week, Bruce. Former Prime Minister Golden. And he's saying, Mr. Speaker, when I spoke with him, that he's the foreman, the jurors, the 12 jurors, chose him as the foreman. And Mr. Speaker, he informed me that he's learning so much and he hopes to give me a report of the problems in the coroner's court because there are quite a few problems in the coroner's court. So, Mr. Speaker, I know that there are many people in Jamaica who dislike.
Member's time has expired.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the member's time be extended by 5 minutes.
How much? I didn't get it. 5 minutes? The question is that the member's time be extended by 5 minutes.
No, it's okay.
Those in favor? Those opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Minister, you may proceed.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I indicated that all Jamaicans must participate, especially when called upon as jurors. And I urge members of parliament, and the doctors in particular, when persons come to them asking them for a medical report or suggesting that they can't serve for whatever reason, that the doctors and members of parliament and others don't really give any reasons for persons not to serve as jurors. Encourage persons to serve as jurors because they're participating in the governance of the country when they serve as jurors. So I urge members of parliament, doctors and others, kindly do not discourage people from serving. Indeed, encourage them to serve as jurors. And in addition, Mr. Speaker, we urge all well-thinking, upright citizens to offer themselves as justices of the peace. Because, as I indicated earlier, they serve a very important function and can contribute to the better governance of our country. Mr. Speaker, with increased access to justice and timely delivery of justice, we can assist in building the trust and confidence and ensure the business facilitation process of our government, thereby improving the growth agenda of Jamaica. Mr. Speaker, I say in one simple sentence that justice is one of the principal pillars of development. It is one of the corners of a good society. It is certainly one of the more important legs on which a democratic and good society stands on. And this minister will ensure, as best as I can, that justice is properly delivered in this country. I thank you.